Hello, hi and welcome back. If you are new around here, then hi, nice to meet you, and if you're returning, then thank you very much for coming back. We're not swearing in this video. We might swear in this video, we'll see how we go. My name's Alana, I'm a 30-something Scottish lady, and I normally like to talk about beauty, makeup, skincare, all that kind of lifestyle pish on this channel. But this video is going to be a little bit different. I understand that if you normally come to my channel to see how I do my eyeshadow, or if it's like a wee travel vlog or something like that, this might be a little bit strange and a little bit out of context for you. But it is just past the 4-year anniversary of my dad's death, and I kind of wanted to come on because I did allude to it in a question and answer video I done a little while ago, at the fact that the reason I started doing YouTube was to deal with my thoughts and feelings in my head on my dad passing away. So I thought I would come on and speak about coping with death, coping with bereavement. So please be warned that I understand completely now if you think I'm going to click off for this video. That's not what I come here for, that's fine. I don't expect, like, with the kind of audience I've got, I don't expect everybody to be like, yeah, this is the kind of shit I come for. I get that, that's okay. But also, I'm putting it out there because I never put it out there 4 years ago, and maybe if I had, maybe people would have gained something from it. Maybe if I'd put that vulnerability out there, then somebody else would have gained from it and thought it's okay, I'm not on my own, and somebody else feels like that, and that might be quite important. So I'm kind of just going to talk about it today, and I said already, I completely understand if it's not for you. I won't be offended, that's all right. I would like some support though, so if you do feel like putting a little thumbs up, I would really appreciate that, because it's taken a lot for me to sit down and actually, I don't even know now, the honest truth is I don't know if this will go on the channel, but if it does, it's taken me a lot to put it up here, so for that reason please be kind. I'm going to talk about my experiences obviously, and everybody is different, but in the job I'm in, I'm a nurse, I see death a lot, and that sounds awful. not like oh, they all just die when they come to my ward. I don't mean it that way. I just mean I've experienced it. I've experienced it in a lot of different forms, and it's not nice. It's never nice. There is such a thing as what people would call a good death, and there's deaths that are horrific, absolutely horrific. I will allude to some of that in a experience type of situation because of the job I've got, but mainly this is going to be my personal experience. What I'm going to do to give this some structure is I'm going to talk about the stages of grief, the stages of bereavement that a lot of us will be aware of and a lot of us will know about, and just tell you how I feel about them and what I think to people saying there are stages to your coping mechanisms in bereavement and if you lose a loved one. So if this video sounds like your kind of thing, I know this has been a slightly more extended intro and I know mines are long anyway, if it sounds like your kind of thing, then please keep on watching. So the first thing I want to say is that I don't think it matters who you lose. You can have friends in your life who are closer than family. You can have family who you don't know and don't want to know. And you can have pets, loved ones. Could be the loss of a relationship even, although bereavement and loss I feel are a little different, but a lot of these things, they all kind of interlude and intersect. And I just want to say it doesn't matter who you lose. If you're feeling it, you're feeling it. That's the first thing I want to say to you, because I lost somebody very, very close to me. I'm not gonna cry. I lost my dad 4 years ago yesterday. Me and my dad, I know everybody will be like, oh, daddy's girl, and I'm an only child as well, but it was, I'm sure lots of people experience, but I'm just telling you mine. It was for me like something else that I just, and God forbid if and when the time comes that I lose my mum, I'm sure I'll feel exactly the same. But me and my dad were two of a kind and very, very like each other, And in a way, that caused us to butt heads quite a lot because we were so similar that we were so stubborn and so arrogant at times that we would be like, no, I'm right and you're wrong. And sometimes it would be to a point where my mum would be like, the two of yous just fuck off because you're doing my nut. Both quite creative. I definitely got my creative aspect, my artful stuff, my drawing, my painting, my sewing. My dad was a fantastic artist. He made amazing clothes, he made amazing, like he could make curtains, he could upholster furniture, he redecorated whole rooms. In later life he went back and got a qualification in interior design to night classes, and he done all that as well. And basically he could do it, he just wanted to prove to himself that he had the qualification for it because he'd done it his whole life, all these creative things. So we were two of a kind in that sense, and in that sense as well meant that, for instance, if I wanted him to do something for me, if I wanted him to make my curtains, or if I wanted him, I could do it myself, but it was easier to say to him because he had so much more experience and he was so much more an experienced seamstress than me that he could do it like that, whereas it probably would have took me like a couple of days to do it. And we just were two of a kind, but also loved each other so much. My mum, I love my mum so much. There's no, I loved more one than the other. I love the both of them. And if she's watching, hello mum, love you. When my dad died, it was sudden. Wasn't expected. I already had experienced 3 quite close deaths in quick succession in my teenage years. Both an aunt and uncle passed away who were very, very close. Very, very close. And then my other uncle as well. He passed away all within, you know, 5 years of each other. The first two, my aunt and uncle, was within 6 months of each other, and then later. So I'd experienced death before. With my dad though, it was just one of those phone calls. Something's wrong, your dad's going to the hospital. It was my mum that phoned me, obviously, and I was like, right, I'm on my way. What can you do? And that minute, all I done was scream. All I did was scream. I had been nursing for about 2 years at that point. It was my 30th birthday and that's the last time I'd seen him. And then 8 days later I got a phone call to say that from my mum. And I just was like, nah, this can't be happening. This just can't be happening. Like, this happens to people at work. This doesn't happen to me. Sorry, I have to try and get myself back on board here. So, headed to the hospital. I got there before my mum because my mum can't drive herself, right? So we rushed there. We get there first. And when I spoke to the doctor, they said to me, we think he's had a stroke. We've gave him clotting medication to break up the clot. We don't know how it's going to go. And I'm like, okay, fine. And I was kind of like, right, okay. Hadn't seen him yet. And then clearly looked upset, obviously. My mum was ushered into the room and she just went to pieces because she thought I was being told he was dead, which he wasn't. And I was like, it's okay, chill. And I think in that moment I became Nurse Alana. I just became what I knew I needed to be. Realistic, taking in the information because my mum wasn't going to do it. And even at times, like, you're not doing it because it's a big thing to take on. So there was me, Alan, my mum, and it was good that we were all there for each other because maybe bits I'd missed or maybe bits my mum's missed, one of the other ones of us had heard it and we can kind of relay it back to each other. And I think when we were taken through to see him, that's when I knew this wasn't going to be good. And that's because of my job. And in hindsight, it's one of those things, the less you know sometimes is better. But when I seen him, I knew. I kinda knew. And I even thought, please just slip away. Because this, if this continues, and this is how you are now, that would have been But I was still living with that now, 4 years on, having to go and visit him somewhere. I think I would have fell to pieces. I think I wouldn't have coped with that as well as I have with him actually passing away. And that is a very, very hard thing to admit, and that is a very, very personal feeling, because I know there's a lot of people, a lot of people who would be like, I don't care, like I would be there for my loved one, like I would still want them to be alive, I would still want them to be here, even if it meant that they wouldn't be the person they were. And I commend you. I commend you intensely, because I don't think I could have done that. But with what has happened, and he passed away, I've been able to get on with my life. I don't think that makes me feel any better, but I just look back and I think, how would we have moved on with life? How would I have done it? Because if he's in a nursing home somewhere and my mum's having to go and visit him every day maybe, or once a week, or in this situation like I wouldn't even get to see him, and I know that's the case for a lot of people, how could my life be what it is today? I don't know. And that's not me, as I've already said, saying anybody else, like you might have a very different perception on that, and please be kind when you think, you know, I do have a different perception on that, that please be kind, because this is me that's went through it, not you. And if you have went through something similar and have had a different experience and maybe disagree with me, that's fine, because I don't disagree with you. I don't, this is just me. So anyway, I think at that stage I knew, and the stages of grief, as I said, to try and keep us on a bit of track here. The first one is doubt, or the first one is denial. I don't think I ever went through denial, and apart from that initial phone call. The initial phone call was a bit like, this has to be a dream, this can't be happening. But as soon as I seen him, I knew this was real. I don't think I ever put any kind of denial stage at all. And I think my mum probably did, and I think for her that's why the next step that happened, because the doctor who was there asked, you know, what would Alan want? That was my dad's name. It's my other half's name as well. It's getting very confusing. And I knew, being so close to my dad, and obviously my mum was very, very close, she was married to him for 40 years, longer. She knew him, but it's very different from being a daughter and be a wife, and also being a nurse and somebody who's not in a medical profession. It's very different. So I knew deep down inside, like, if we are gonna salvage what I remember of my dad, and if he is not going to be that person, he would not want you to do any heroics, let me put it that way. He doesn't want you rescuing him to then be fed through a tube for the rest of his life. And I know that's very, very graphic, but I have to say it that way. Whereas my mum, I think, was like, no, but he could just have a weakness on one side, and he could just have this, and he could just have that, and we need to fight. And I didn't argue, and I didn't even utter a stutter about me thinking that's not what's going to happen, mum. Like, I wasn't in denial, but she wasn't in denial, but she had hope. She had hope. It makes me sound like I'm a really hopeless soul. I'm not. I'm very realistic at times, and it's just unfortunate, like I say, sometimes the more you know, the worse it is. And she just had that hope. And Alan did too. Alan was very much like, you need to give your dad a chance. And when it was just me and him, I was like, Alan, my dad needs to slip away. Like, this isn't going to be good. This isn't going to be a good outcome. But I never said that to my mum, because I couldn't take that hope away from her, and it wouldn't be fair to. So I don't think I ever went through denial, even after he eventually died. Like, he died a week or 8 days, was it, after? He died on February the 6th, and he went in on the January the 28th, so that's how long he was in hospital. January the 28th, 8 days after my birthday, and he died on the 6th of February. So he wasn't in hospital very long. But they took him up to ICU, and the reason they took him up was because my mum said, no, please, do your best. Do everything you can for him, and that was fine. But I think even from that point, and then to when he died, I never had any denial about what was going on. I wasn't like, this isn't happening, like, no, he's going to be fine. I knew. I just knew he wasn't going to be fine. I knew this was it. And I just knew deep down. I also want to say, I think that the stages of grief is not one after the other, and I think it's a spectrum. I don't think it can just be, you go through this and then you go through that. You can jump back and forward and forth and through every stage there is several times, round and round, maybe all of them in one day, and then for months you might not feel any, and then you go back into another one. I think that's very much the state. I can't say you go through this and then that and then that. I don't think that's the situation personally. Anger is obviously the next one. I would say yeah, that's the one that I have particularly struggled with. Initially, again, anger, just because why is this happening? Like, you know, it wasn't that I didn't believe it was happening, but I was angry that it was happening. I was really angry that it was happening. And angry with my mum, and we were angry with each other, I would say, just because you know, I'm trying to say to her tentatively at first, but then as the days went on, like, Mum, he's not coming back, like, this isn't going to happen. Like, this was while he was still in hospital, not once he died. But she just had so much hope, and like I say, initially I could not have been blunt with her. I couldn't have done that to her. It wasn't my place to. Even as her daughter, it's not my place to. She is his wife at the end of the day. But as time went on, and during those days between the 28th and the 6th of February, there was a bit of drinking going on and stuff, and I think that happens as well. Like, you turn to ways that you're like, oh, how are we going to deal with this? Like, what do we do? And basically you're in limbo. You're in a horrible, horrible limbo. And crosswords were said, and crosswords happened, and I remember lashing out at my auntie as well, because she obviously came to support my mum, and I just was like, I can't listen to this. And now I think anger is one of the stages that still haunts me, because I still get quite angry, and I think my patience has changed massively in 4 years. Like, 4 years ago I think I was a lot more patient a person, and now I'm a bit like, why are you even asking that? Like, my fuse just goes sometimes, and I think that's probably because sometimes I just think, why would somebody ask something so stupid, or why would somebody be so, I hate to use the privileged word as if it's like a hot topic, but you know, that way, like, someone really doesn't realise how lucky they are sometimes, and sometimes you just want to say to them, for God's sake, like, you don't know the pain I've been through, and you get angry and you're like, if you knew, you wouldn't be behaving like that. And that's, I don't just mean in my work. I mean, sometimes in my work I feel like that, but I wouldn't necessarily say that to somebody. But in general, everyday life as well, like, if someone's just acting and you think you're being an asshole, and instead of thinking, I wonder why they're acting like that, and instead of thinking, maybe I should ask them if they're okay, is there a reason why they're being so entitled, is there a reason why they think that they should just, instead of being patient with it, nowadays I'm very much like, will you shut your mouth? And I wish I wasn't, but I feel like anger is something that I still struggle with, and it's more to do with an anger in a patience sort of way. I've lost a lot of patience for just stupidity and things like that since this happened. Bargaining. Now, bargaining, I think that's probably one of these ones where it's a bit like, see if you just, you know, maybe we could have just done this, and if I'd just done that. And I think, yeah, I probably have been there. As I say, it was 8 days after my birthday, so my 30th birthday, I went out for a lovely meal with my mum and dad. We'd made some friends in a bar, and we had some drinks, and it was really, really nice. And then my dad was helping me, because we had just moved in here in the August and my birthday's in the January, and he was helping me redecorate and he was helping me do a bit of tiling and stuff because I'd never done that before. And part of me did think, like, you know, what if I didn't get him to do that? I mean, he was 65 and maybe he shouldn't have been up ladders and stuff like that, but I mean 65 is young nowadays, it's not an old 65, and he wasn't an old 65. But I do sometimes think, like, what if I never asked him to do that? Like, would he have been okay? Like, he wasn't well enough to be doing it. But actually my dad didn't have any past medical history, he didn't have any ongoing issues like that, because he smoked. Yeah, he was on like a blood thinner. He wasn't taking them as frequently as he should have, probably the reason he ended up having a stroke. But again, that's my rational brain coming into things. I mean, he could have been taking them and still had a stroke. Like, he could have had there's two types of strokes. You either have one where you have a massive bleed or you have a clot. There's two types. So, you know, who's to say? Who's to say? You can't say one or the other. That's not a fear-mongering thing. If your medical professionals are advising that you take blood thinners then, or coagulants, then I would certainly follow the advice of the medical professionals. I don't think for a second that because my dad wasn't taking his coagulants as often as he should have been, if at all, then yes, I do think sometimes if he'd done that, would he still be here? But as I say, if he'd done that and then fell and banged his head, he could have had a massive bleed in the other way because his blood was thinner. So I don't like to stay in that bargaining area, because the reality is it has happened, and the reality is for a while you sit in that bargaining area and you go over all the what ifs and you go over all the if onlys. It's not a nice place to be because the outcome is still the same. They're still not here. So I don't like to dwell in that area, because I just think it just beats yourself up. Like, unfortunately, if you can come to accept it, there's no point in wondering how you could have changed it, because it is what's done is done, I'm afraid. And it could have been a completely different thing. It could have been something completely different. He could have went out and been hit by a bus, and it still would have been a shit, and it still would have been as heartbreaking, and it still is heartbreaking, and it still would have been as hard. So it doesn't really matter how it happened. So try and not stay in that bargaining area. That's probably what I would say. I don't think there's too much success in being there, if I'm honest with you. Depression, again, I can't say, I mean, I've never been diagnosed with depression, right? And I know there's big differences. Like, there's differences between someone being like, I'm really feeling a bit low this week, or I'm struggling this month, or I'm depressed, clinically depressed, or I am severely depressed and I can't even get out of bed and I can't even face the day. The idea of getting out of bed is just making me feel so, like I can't. Or the opposite, so nothing. The idea of getting out of bed is like pointless. If you're there, I can't give you advice on depression, because there are so many different areas and so many different aspects and so many different reasons as to why you might feel depression. But if you're somebody who's clinically depressed and has been diagnosed that you're suffering from some depression, maybe postnatal depression, or it might be a bereavement, any reason, well, the reason that you are there is not for me to define, and not for me to advise on whether you should see your doctor about medication or not, and not for me to judge if you're on medication or not. I don't feel that I ever got to a stage where I was like, I need something to help me in a drug. Like, you know, I didn't feel I needed that. I don't even want to say that I think I was depressed, because I probably feel a bit like I wasn't depressed, I was coping with the loss of my dad. Like, and a lot of, maybe somebody watching this will be like, well, it's all right to admit you're depressed. I agree completely and utterly. There's no shame in saying I think I've got depression, or I need help, I've got depression, by all means. I'm just saying that for me, in my brain, I was like, well, of course I'm sad. My dad's just died. Like, of course I'm sad. Like, I'm not depressed. I'm fucking sad because my dad's just died. That's how I felt anyway. And I don't think you ever stop feeling sad. And when you think about it, certainly for me, I think it's different. People say time's a great healer. I don't know if I agree with that, because anytime I think about it, anytime at all, and I can speak to people, if somebody says something to me like, oh, your mum and dad, and I say, oh, actually my dad's passed away, and I don't find it difficult to say that, and I don't find it difficult to tell them how he died or when he died, like that's all fine. But if I sit here like today and I'm talking on a camera and I have to think about those incidents, and I think about them, and I see you. My dad was a really big guy. He was like 6'4", big strapping guy. He was my big strong person, and to see him there so vulnerable, as soon as I think about those things, that's what makes me sad. And that never goes away. I don't think however many years it will ever go away. Oh. And in a way I'm glad it won't go away, because it just shows me how much I care about him, and I still care about him, and I just didn't want to see him hurting. Oh, sorry. So depression, I don't think I was ever depressed, if you want to use the word. I was very sad. And when I think about it, it makes me sad because he's not here. And when of course I see things, maybe on a TV show or something like that, and I think, you never got to see me get married, you never got to see me have a baby. My grandchild won't have a grandpa. Not on my side, obviously. My grandchild won't have a grandpa, it doesn't even make sense. My child, sorry, if I'm blessed with children, won't have a Grandpa Campbell. That makes me sad. Stuff like that made me really sad. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's perfectly normal. I think anybody would feel that way. That makes me sad, and the reason it makes me sad as well is because I think it would be a brilliant grandpa. I think it would have been amazing. And sometimes little things will happen, like Alan, not even a few months ago, had said to me, like, one of the last conversations he had with my dad was saying, like, you look after her, and he was like, of course I will. And it was like, it was a really nice moment, because I promised your dad I would always look after you, and at the time, at my birthday, you're just saying it in the, of course I will, like she's my partner, she's my life, I love her, and I'm gonna look after her. And then 8 days later for that to happen, it was like, I'm really glad I had the conversation with him, because now he knows, this is from Alan's point of view, now he knows I will be here and I will always look after you, Alana. Not that I can't look after myself, but you know what I mean. So things like that make me sad. But I can't say I'm depressed, and I think you will go out of in and out of spells like that, but they come and go quite quickly now. I don't sit and get awful upset about it, apart from now obviously when I talk about it, but it kind of comes and goes. Like, oh, I'll see something on the TV or somebody will mention something and I know, oh, it just makes me remember, and then I think I'm alright though. I am actually alright, and it's just a really horrible and sad situation that he won't see me do these things. Not, well, I'm here, like, not face to face anyway. I'm sure he's looking up at me, and yes, I do mean up, because I don't think he'd have got into heaven. He was such a tricky dicky. I think he would have been happier down down below. So, the last grief segment, what do you call them, stage, is acceptance. And as I say, I think this is very much a, very much a spectrum. I think you can, like, even in those first like week of him being in hospital, I think I probably went through every single stage, and then I've been through them all again a million times. I don't think you can say like you go through stages and you've got to work through these stages. That's not how it works. So acceptance, as I've already said, I think I was pretty accepting of the situation quite early on because of what I do as a job, and because I was very much aware of the reality of the situation. I accepted it quite quickly. It's difficult, I suppose, in a way, to be accepting or find acceptance in the fact that what I've just said, like, he won't ever be here again, and he won't ever see me do certain things that are kind of milestone events in your life, so to speak. Or if I achieve something really good in work, or if I got a really good job that I wanted to go for, or, you know, all these things that I think if my dad was here, he would give me a wee pat on the back and he'd be like, you know, that's my lassie. Like he won't be here to do that. That's probably an area where acceptance comes in and out. But I was very accepting of the situation of he was acutely unwell, had had a massive stroke, and the prognosis was not good. And I knew that from a very, like, from seeing him, the moment I laid eyes on him, I kind of just thought, this isn't going to be good. I know this isn't going to be good. This is it. Strap yourself in. So acceptance is one of these things, like, it's not as simple as you accept that the person is dying or is dead or is gone. It's something that's probably kind of ongoing as well. Like, you just have to accept that sometimes, before, maybe you don't even realise it, you could be standing somewhere looking out on a view or looking out on something and being like, God, my dad would love this. And it's like, you've got to accept that that will never happen. And that's quite sad. It's quite a sad video, isn't it? Sorry. The other thing I was going to say is my mum now has got a new partner. I suppose in a way that would be a term of acceptance because of the death of my dad, because I still think mum and dad would very much be together if he didn't pass away. So that was a kind of different kind of acceptance, but again, not one that I struggled with particularly. I actually really wanted it to happen. I wouldn't like the idea of my mum, because I live quite far away from her as well, like being on her own all the time and not having anybody. And there's part of me that sits and thinks like my dad wouldn't want that either. But then the reality of it, I'm like, maybe. But I think my dad would have been like, fuck you, what are you doing? But honestly, like, I don't think he would have wanted her to be sad. I don't think he would have been like, do you know what, just have no life now and don't do anything and just sit and cry about me all the time. He wouldn't have wanted that. Would he have been so like, oh yeah, just go out with another guy? No, of course he wouldn't, but I think that's pretty understandable. But I really wanted her to, so when she told me, and she was so like worried about telling me, that probably is because I'm the kind of person, as I say, I'm not angry, it's just my face, but also I'm her daughter, and also the fact that it is like, how are you going to react to this? Like, your dad's dead, and she was worried, she was so worried about telling me. I remember I was like, don't be ridiculous, like, that's great news, like, I'm really glad that you're putting yourself out there again, and if this person is good, then I'm good, like, it doesn't bother me. I want you to be happy. And I suppose that's a type of acceptance as well. And I never ever for a second was like, what are you doing? Never would I be either, never ever. So yeah, I suppose that's been my acceptance side of things. On the whole, what I'm gonna say is it's not easy. I don't think anybody would ever say it is. And I dread the day now it should happen to my mum. Because going through that pain again, it's hard enough thinking about it. It does send me into fear, and in a way, maybe that's like my depression. I don't know. I could think about it all the time and I probably would be in a bit of a depression if I worried about things like that all the time. And the best thing to do is just live your life. It's easier said than done. I think at the time when it happened, I took 6 weeks off of work. It's not a particularly long amount of time. Make sure you're ready to go back. I think I maybe went back a little quick, but it kind of helped me in the sense that because of the job I'm in, being busy all the time and not being at home thinking about things helped, but also having to be very strong for other people who are either sick or maybe people who are, I hate to say it, but you're looking after them but they're very obnoxious and not particularly nice sometimes. Having to take that on the chin while you're feeling the way you're feeling. I'm not gonna lie to you, there's a good few times where I had to, and not say I've just fucking lost my dad, stop being an asshole. I never done it, but it certainly crossed my mind. Like, I can't deny that. So what I would say is make sure you're ready to go back. The other problem with that is it's like, how will you know until you go? So I could have took 6 months off and then went back and had that experience of someone being really obnoxious to me and still felt I'm gonna say something to them. That could have still happened. You see? That's the problem. You don't know until you go. So in a way, I'm glad I went back quite quick because it made me cope with that gave me a coping mechanism of, right, somebody tries to hit me with any snash again, then I'm gonna take a deep breath, I'm gonna walk out the room, maybe have a cry in a cupboard or a scream in a cupboard, and then come back and be like, hi, wasn't very nice the way you spoke to me, but let's start again. And that's how you have to be, and it's difficult. And I think that's very much because of, again, the area I work in. It would be different for other people, in all different walks of life. I think, like, nobody could walk into any place that they're working and just be like talking to people like a piece of shit or shouting at someone. But I think especially in the job I do, you have to take quite a lot on the chin, and so therefore you need to make sure you're ready to go back and just take it slowly. I think as well, one of the things that really helps is if you have people who can support you. I'm very lucky that way. I have a wonderful partner who, if he wasn't there, I don't know where I'd have been. And I think if it wasn't for him being there in my life, I don't mean just what he was doing, but being there in my life at that time, I could have turned to another route of my life quite quickly, or just went back onto party mode like you do in your 20s, like just out seeing people, doing what you want to try and forget about it. But because I had that person in my life, I was very lucky because I had them to help me through it. Not everybody has somebody, so what do you do if you don't have somebody? Friends and relatives, like my mum, turn to each other. I think that's really important. I'm not the biggest talker. I know that sounds mental because I'm on YouTube, but when it comes to this kind of stuff, I'm not massively like, let's have a talk about it. Even when I was growing up, my mum was a bit like, God, you don't tell me anything. So it's easy for me to say talk when I'm not particularly a big talker, but even just sometimes phoning, say sometimes I phone my mum up and have a moan and a rant about something that's completely random, completely random. It could be the fact that the bin men have not changed my bins. But she knows that the fact that I'm at the end of the phone bawling and greeting about the bins, that it's not the bins that I'm on the phone about. So talk, just lift the phone. Even if it's just to be like, how are you? You know, I'm having a shit day. Have a rant. Do it as much as you want. That's why I used to turn the camera on. Have a rant. Because I just didn't know who else to rant to. That's why I started doing it. It really helps to get it out your head sometimes. Maybe write it down. Sometimes that really helps people. I tried that. And although it helped a little, it's much easier for me to sit and talk than it is to write. So writing things down helps sometimes. The other things to remember is that because you've lost someone, be it a father, a mother, a wife, a child, that doesn't make you not the person you were. And I mean in the sense that I'm still a daughter. If it's your mum lost her husband, she's still a wife to my dad, you know, although she's now got a new partner, like she was still very much my dad's wife. If it's child, you're still their parent. Remember that as well. I think that's really important, that you are still that person and that will never change. The love you've had with that person will never change. I think that's really important to remember. I'm glad the way things have turned out, and that sounds mental, doesn't it? But I think it's true. Like, I think I'm glad things have happened the way they have, and I've dealt with what I've dealt with, but I've come out the other side, and I like to think I've got new perceptions of things and stronger in myself, and also just know how to maybe support other people a little better in my job when they're going through these things. So I try and take the positive side of it. If all else fails and you really feel I am not good and it's been, you know, years and I'm still in this awful place, then maybe go to someone professional and see if you can get some bereavement counselling. I've never had it, but it might just be what you need, and I can't give you advice on that because I've never had it. But sometimes people just need a little bit extra support and help, and sometimes it's not with those around them. It needs to be somebody who's a completely separate entity as well. So don't be ashamed to do that. Absolutely not. Anyway, I'm sorry if this seems like a bit of a blunt ending, but Alan has come in and he's going to be making me a Nando's chicken for my dinner. So with all that being said, I hope somebody has gained something from this, and I hope that it gives you a little bit of, oh good, like I felt that too. It's not just me, I'm not on my own. And maybe a little bit of, okay, so here's this other side to this woman that I've watched do makeup on YouTube for however long now, but an actual side to her that, you know, I didn't even know that existed. I didn't know that was part of her life, and maybe like she understands why I am the way I am sometimes. I don't know. But yeah, I'm still working through all these stages, and I think anger is definitely the one I need to work with the most. Just lose my temper so much now. I might actually, maybe I'll need to go and see somebody professional about that, just because it's not even I lose my temper. That's not true. That makes it sound like I'm like punching people in the face. I'm not. It's more of a like, I'm just not speaking about this, and I walk away. I just feel like, oh hello. Anyway, as I said, I'm going to leave it there. I hope you have gained something from this. I'm sorry if it wasn't what you're used to, and please, please, please be kind. And I'll see you all again in the next one. Bye.